Margaret Thatcher, The Iron Lady, by Tahar Aitelhabib, Nathaniel Banjo, and Onyeka Akwara. Margaret Hilda Roberts was born on October 30th, 1925, in Grantham, England. She was born from the conservative Methodist family and learned from her father, which was a conservative politician. Many of the traits that made her such a great prime minister were inherited from her parents, more specifically her father. When Margaret Thatcher's father, Alfred Roberts, was just 13 years old, he dropped out of school to make a living and help out at home. He learned through reading instead of traditional schooling, and these hardships instilled a working demeanor in which he soon passed on to his daughter. Her father was also a town councillor, Rotarian, and Methodist, so he had many responsibilities. He also managed to increase his wealth as a grocer because of his many good attributes such as reliability. Not only did she attain her good characters from her father, her mother, Beatrice Roberts, also helped contribute to the upbringing of this great leader. Although she was not as involved as Alfred, Beatrice helped out her community where she could and gave back to those less fortunate. Margaret Thatcher grew up in a very strict, working, and religious household. She attended Oxford University. She graduated in 1946 with a degree in chemistry, and afterwards she worked for 4 years as a research chemist 2 years after she graduated. During her time, she studied law, and in 1950, Thatcher made her bid for Parliament and lost. Afterwards, in 1951, she married Dennis Thatcher, and in 1953, she gave birth to a set of twins, Mark and Carol Thatcher. In 1959, Margaret Thatcher had won a seat in Parliament, and after 2 years, she was promoted to the Undersecretary for Pensions and National Insurance. Margaret Thatcher felt that the state was too involved in the economy and too involved in each individual's life, so she took a stand. In 1964, conservatives had lost control over the government, and Thatcher was later promoted to the education minister of the shadow cabinet. She held a variety of government and ministry positions over the years. In 1970, the conservatives regained power over the government, and in that same year, Thatcher became Secretary of State for Education and Science. And during this time, she had made some unpopular budget cuts after axing a school milk program which earned her the name Thatcher the Milk Snatcher. In 1970, Margaret Thatcher's father died without much to leave behind for Margaret or her family. In 1974, conservatives were voted out again in favor of the Liberal Labour Party. On February 11th of 1975, she became the leader of the Conservative Party and the first female opposition leader. During this time, the labor union had issued increasing unemployment and financial difficulties, and that helped the Conservatives seize power back in 1979. The fact that Margaret Thatcher was a female heavily impacted her campaign and the career to follow. One might think that Margaret being a woman would make her less popular, but Thatcher thought otherwise. Being as optimistic as she is, Margaret Thatcher believed that being a woman actually benefited her and even gave her an advantage in the election. On May 4th of 1979, Margaret Thatcher was elected Prime Minister. Margaret Thatcher's first actions as Prime Minister were to raise interest rates and cut social spending and privatize sections like gas, water, and electricity. Feminists seem to have hated her, but she was a woman in what was basically a world of men. Yet she took men on in her own game, without any kind of special help from quotas or whatever, and won, seemingly effortlessly. Even in these days, when many feel that feminism has gotten a bit weird and become insufferable, it's hard not to admire her accomplishments and what she's done for Britain.
Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope. And to all the British people, howsoever they voted, may I say this, now that the election is over, may we get together and strive to serve and strengthen the country of which we are so proud to be a part.
Even though many have accused her of basically causing the poverty of the United Kingdom, she stood up for the individual rights in ways that stories tend to care about. For instance, she supported decriminalization of homosexual acts on the basis that the government had no business telling people how to live their lives, and she most certainly did not believe in a strong government controlling everything. Margaret Thatcher was in support of a free market, supported capitalism, and was against communism. And in the 1970s, she accused the Soviet Union of being bent on world domination. And the Soviet press at this time had dubbed Thatcher as the Iron Lady after a fiercely anti-communist speech she gave in 1976. After the Soviet press had dubbed her Thatcher the Iron Lady, Margaret decided not to take offense to petty names such as this one, and in fact used it in later speeches as sort of an entertainment to the crowd.
My face softly made up and my fair hair gently waved. The Iron Lady of the Western world.
In April of 1982, Margaret Thatcher had faced an international challenge when Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands. And although they were part of Britain, these islands were near Argentina, and this caused tension between the nations. In the Falklands War, Margaret had sent soldiers halfway across the world to claim an island that very few people have heard about, and had won that war. But in 1986, in her second term, the economy had fully recovered. In Margaret Thatcher's second term on 1983, her unpopularity was exemplified by a long and violent mining strike, and the next year, Thatcher barely escaped assassination by the Irish Republic Army. In response to the attempted assassination, her unfazed attitude showed after that attempt only increased her popularity. Thatcher was fairly unpopular before the war and became more known afterwards. And in her third term, when Thatcher wanted to implement a fixed tax, this was hugely unpopular and it led to her resignation on November 22nd of 1990. A strong and very often divisive figure in British and world politics, Margaret Thatcher was the longest-serving British Prime Minister in the 20th century and the only woman to hold that office. From understanding her psychology to her unique capacity to exercise power, Margaret Thatcher was tough, didn't take any nonsense from anyone, and fought the challenge the unions presented to the authority of the British government and the stability of the economy, and won.
Because we on this side have never flinched from difficult decisions, that this House and this country can have confidence in this government today. Yeah.
After her resignation in 1990, she went on to give memos and speeches around the world, and she was Britain's longest-serving Prime Minister for more than a century. In 2002, Margaret has suffered a series of small strokes, and her husband had passed away the next year. In 2011, Thatcher's story made it to the big screen when Meryl Streep took up the role of the Iron Lady. On April 8th of 2013, in London, Margaret Thatcher had passed away due to a stroke, and after living for 87 years, is remembered as a great leader of Britain.